Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Wednesday, April 10th, 2024. And if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my Rundown best bet in the MLB, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Wednesday in Major League Baseball. First up, we see the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Minnesota Twins. Bobby Miller and Chris Paddock are your projected starters. Now, last start for Bobby Miller, certainly not his best. He went only an inning and two-thirds against the Cubs at Wrigley Field. 5 earned runs, a home run, 2 walks to go with it. That was a 9-7 Dodgers loss. But the previous start to that one was a really good one against the Cardinals. 6 innings, a shutout ball, 11 Ks. So some inconsistency there. It's not always easy pitching at Wrigley Field, and that was a high-scoring game overall. Both offenses had a big day. So I do think Bobby Miller bounces back here against a Twins team and strikes out quite a bit. I think it benefits a starter who is strikeout dependent like Bobby Miller. Chris Paddock, his first start back in a while, not really the best one. It was 4 innings of 2-run balls, so on the surface, not too bad, but he did give up a home run. He gave up 2 walks and 6 base hits, so, good amount of base runners, and he only had the 2 strikeouts, and this is a very good Dodgers lineup, as we know. I think they'll be able to get to Paddock in the end. Twins have a good bullpen, but I don't think it's going to matter in this, so I'm going to take the Dodgers and lay the 1.5 runs on the run line. Next up, we see the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. Aaron Nola and Lance Lynn are your starters. Another game where we saw, it was kind of the flip side for Aaron Nola, who struggled in his first start against the Braves. 4 1/3 innings, 11 base hits, 6 earned runs, 2 home runs. And then he bounces back against the Nationals in his last start, 5 2/3 of shutout baseball, 4 strikeouts, and a 4-0 Phillies win. Nola kind of had an inconsistent year last year. He had some really good, outings against some tough teams in the National League, and then he got crushed in a few games, and that's why his ERA ended up in the 4s by the end of the season. On the other side, Lance Lynn, last year it wasn't his best season to start this season. He pitched well in that first game against the Dodgers, but it wasn't great against one of the weakest lineups in baseball. Last start against the Marlins, 4 2/3, 8 base hits, 4 earned runs, and 3 home runs, and that was his first start at Busch Stadium this season against a really good Phillies lineup and a Phillies bullpen that, while it struggled early on, I still think is a really good bullpen. On paper, when you look at the projected WAR, some of the best in baseball. I'm not too worried about this Phillies bullpen right now. I think, going forward, it's going to improve. So I'm willing to take the Phillies here with Nola and a strong lineup in this spot on the money line. Next up, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Logan Gilbert and Yusei Kikuchi are your starters. Logan Gilbert's last start against the Brewers, kind of a strange one. We saw two different sides of Logan Gilbert in that game. 5 2/3 innings of 1 walk, 7 strikeout baseball is what you want to see. However, there's 3 home runs given up in that game as well, and these weren't wall scrapers. They were mistake pitches, and they were absolute bombs for the Brewers in that ball game, and that ended up being a 6-5 Brewers win. However, that was against the Brewers, who right now are top 10 in baseball in isolated power against righties. You're facing the Blue Jays in this game, who are dead last in baseball going into Tuesday's games in team OPS against righties, and they're also bottom 5 in baseball in isolated power. So it's a much better matchup, in my opinion, for Logan Gilbert, who still has really good strikeout stuff. He's got 15 Ks in 12 2/3 innings. His control's been there in terms of not missing outside the zone. He's only had 2 walks given up. He just has to watch that home run ball, which we've seen it hurt him in his career at times. But I think he bounces back in this game. I think the Mariners' offense honestly matches up pretty well here. Even though Yusei Kikuchi pitched well in that last game against the Yankees, the Mariners are much better against lefties, at least so far this season. Much lower strikeout rate. They're getting on base more, and their BABIP's actually pretty low, so we could expect some more positive regression for this team offensively against those lefties. And, while, like I said, Kikuchi pitched well in that game, but he still only went 5 1/3 innings. His control's been a little bit of a concern in recent years, so his pitch counts get up there early and is not able to pitch too deep in the ball game. So I'm going to go with the Seattle Mariners in this game on the money line. I expect a bounce-back start for Logan Gilbert. Next up, we see the Arizona Diamondbacks taking on the Colorado Rockies. Tommy Henry and Austin Gomber are your starters. Not my favorite game on the board. I'm going to side to the over here. I don't love taking Coors Field overs because a lot of the times the numbers are inflated, especially when you have 2 weak starting pitchers in the mound. The books know, it's Coors Field. The books know it's who's pitching in the game. So the number, you're going to have to take a 12, 12.5, 13 sometimes in these types of matchups. But to me, it's the only way to go with Austin Gomber struggling to start the year, the Diamondbacks crushing lefties to start the year, and Tommy Henry, don't really trust him in this game either. He, so far 7 ERA. He was much better against the Braves in his last start, but that's actually in a Braves lineup we're going to talk about later that doesn't hit lefties too well, and still they were able to get a home run off of Henry and 2 walks in a Braves eventual victory. So Henry, he's played a 9-4 and 6-5 game to start the season, and neither of those games were at Coors Field. Now I think this one's going to be a pretty high-scoring game. I don't love the Rockies bullpen, so when Gomber makes his way out of the ball game, the Diamondbacks should still be able to score some runs late. Like I said, not my favorite game on the board, but I'm going to lean towards the over here in Arizona, Colorado. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the San Francisco Giants. Patrick Corbin and Jordan Hicks are your starters. To me, this is just way too much of a lopsided pitching matchup for me to take a chance with the underdog in this game. I got to go with San Francisco and lay the 1.5 runs. Jordan Hicks, his first 2 starts with his new team, he's been excellent. He's got a .75 ERA. He's missing bats. His control's been there. That's really impressive for somebody that has one of the best fastballs in the game in terms of velocity. He, has had some walk issues in his career, especially towards the beginning of his career as a reliever, but only 1 walk in those 11 innings. I think that he pitches well in this game, and Patrick Corbin, a lefty, facing a Giants team that last year struggled quite a bit against lefties, but like we mentioned in the offseason, they brought in a few key bats, especially right-handed bats, Jorge Soler, Matt Chapman, to really address those needs. And now we see them actually hitting pretty well against lefties. They're top 10 in baseball in team OPS against lefties, top 15 in isolated power. Their walk rate is not too bad, and their strikeout rate really low at 16.4%. While Patrick Corbin was okay in that last start against the Phillies, it still was 4 earned runs and 9 base hits with 3 walks in a 4-0 Nationals loss. So while I think Corbin is better than what he's given credit for, I don't think he's good enough in this game. Give me the San Francisco Giants laying the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Zach Littell and Jose Soriano are the projected starters on ESPN. I'm seeing Griffin Canning for the Angels on MLB.com. So, we'll have to see who the official starter is. But to me, either of those options, I still like the Rays in this ballgame. I think pitching really matters in a game like this. Zach Littell's been really sharp this season. Even his last game at Coors Field, he goes 5 innings of 1-run baseball with 5 strikeouts. We mentioned that he was really sharp in spring training. He's carried that over to the regular season. 11 innings of 1-run ball for Zach Littell to start the year. I think he pitches well, and I like the Rays bullpen behind him. Even though the ERA's been steep to start the season, there's been a lot of tough matchups. The Coors Field series, I'm not worried about this Rays bullpen right now. The Angels bullpen I'm always concerned with. We've been concerned with this bullpen the last few years, and I don't think Soriano or Canning will go deep in this ballgame. So I think we're going to see a lot of Angels relievers in this ballgame, and I think the Rays will be able to get to them. I like Tampa Bay in this one on the money line. Next up, we see the Chicago White Sox taking on the Cleveland Guardians. Tanner Bybee and Eric Fedde are your projected starters. I'm really impressed with what I see from Tanner Bybee so far this year. He's right now 1-0 with that 3.86 ERA. He's got those 13 strikeouts in 9 1/3 innings, and both of those games were on the road, where last year Bybee wasn't the best. When you look at the home and road splits, on the road he had a 3.79 ERA, which is still not too bad, but at home in 68 1/3 innings, he had a 2.11 ERA for the Cleveland Guardians, and his control was much better. I think he pitches well in this game against one of the weakest lineups in baseball. Eric Fedde has actually not been too bad for the White Sox to start the season, but still, the White Sox have lost both of his games to start the year, and he's facing a really, red-hot Guardians lineup that doesn't strike out much for a guy that doesn't really miss a ton of bats to begin with. I do think that the Guardians will be able to get to him. Give me the Cleveland Guardians. I'm going to lay the 1.5 runs on the run line. Next up, we see the Chicago Cubs taking on the San Diego Padres. Dylan Cease and Kyle Hendricks are your starters. Dylan Cease was somebody that I was a little bit worried about going into the season. His numbers last year, the walks, the control, and even his strikeout numbers starting to dip a little bit. I was worried about him in 2024, but he's pitched pretty well to start the year. He's got 13 Ks in 10 2/3 innings. The control's been fine. 4 walks in 10-2 is a little steep, but not too bad for a starter like Cease, and no home runs given up as well. He's been sharp, and he actually, it's even more impressive that he faced the same lineup twice. We know the advantage certainly goes to the lineup in a situation like that, especially, in only a 5-day span. So Cease has been sharp this season. I think he pitches well in this game, even though it's also another tough matchup here with the Chicago Cubs, who have been great offensively to start the year. But on the other side, it's can't trust Kyle Hendricks in this game. We saw him struggle on the road in his first game, and I mentioned he's a Wrigley Field pitcher. I think he'll pitch better at Wrigley Field this season. But in his first Wrigley start, he gives up 5 earned runs against the Dodgers, 8 base hits, a home run to go with it. So for me, he's just not in good enough form to me to trust him in this ball game. And we know what the Chicago Cubs bullpen did in the first game of this series. Give me the San Diego Padres on the money line. Next up, we see the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Cincinnati Reds. No official starter for Milwaukee, but Hunter Green should be going for Cincinnati. Hunter Green's been very sharp this year. You look at his numbers, 13 Ks in 10 2/3, just like Dylan Cease. his control's been fine. He's somebody that's going to walk some guys. There's no doubt about it. He had 4 walks in his first start against Washington, but only 1 in the next one against the New York Mets. He's somebody that, similar to Cease, has had some issues with the home run ball at times in his career, especially early on, but no home runs given up this season. He's doing a better job of keeping the ball on the ground. And like I said, missing bats, this guy, if he's missing bats and limiting the home run ball, can be one of the best pitchers in the National League. He's certainly got that potential and talent. And I think he pitches well in this game, even though it's at Great American against a very powerful lineup. I would say it's his toughest matchup so far, as he only faced the Nationals and the Mets to start the year. But I think he's good enough here. We don't know the official start from Milwaukee, but I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Reds on the money line. Next up, we see the Miami Marlins taking on the New York Yankees. Ryan Weathers and Marcus Stroman are your starters. Marcus Stroman's yet to give up an earned run this season. He's been very sharp for the Yankees. And Ryan Weathers, while he only gave up 1 earned in his last start against the Cardinals, it's still not good enough. I mean, he gave up a home run, 3 walks, 3 base hits, and only 5 innings of work in an 8-5 Marlins loss. So 9-3 and 8-5, the 2 final scores in the Ryan Weathers outings this year. The Yankees have hit lefties very well this season. The Marlins offense has not been great, and we know that bullpen's also struggled. So give me the New York Yankees on the run line, laying the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Baltimore Orioles taking on the Boston Red Sox. Nick Pivetta and Cole Irvin are your starters. Yeah, I mentioned that I'd much rather take Nick Pivetta on the road when, he's got somebody that's had issues with the home run ball in his career, so pitching at Fenway Park, not really the best location for a starting pitcher like that. However, I'm willing to take Nick Pivetta in this game because, even though he's had his Fenway Park struggles, this is Cole Irvin on the other side. I wouldn't want to take him anywhere, honestly. He struggled his first game against the Royals, 5 innings, 7 base hits, 4 earned runs in that 4-1 Royals win. And, the Orioles bullpen, we've mentioned there's some regression concerns with this bullpen. It struggled towards the tail end of that Pirates series. And Nick Pivetta last year, while it wasn't at Fenway, it was still at the start against the Orioles. His lone game against Baltimore was 7 innings of shutout baseball with 10 strikeouts in a 3-0 Red Sox win. And he was really sharp towards the end of the regular season in general. Even in his last few Fenway Park starts, he was pitching pretty well. So, you know what? I'm going to take Nick Pivetta in this game and the Boston Red Sox on the money line. Next up, we see the Atlanta Braves taking on the New York Mets. Jose Quintana for New York, no official starter for Atlanta. Jose Quintana's pitched pretty well for New York. While there are certainly regression concerns when you look at the expected numbers, the expected ERA, and the xFIP, he still has a sub-3 ERA right now, and the Braves are actually a team that are not hitting lefties too well. They are absolutely crushing right-handed pitching, that's for sure. But against lefties, when you look at the numbers, the OPS is much lower. The isolated power is much lower. The strikeout rate's a little bit steeper at 26.3%. The walk rate at 7.4% is pretty low. And that's actually with a pretty high BABIP. So I'm not really in love with the Braves lineup right now against left-handed pitching. I think Quintana can deliver a pretty good outing, 4 to 5 decent innings. The Braves, we don't know who the official starter is, but we know this is one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. The bullpen's sharp, and I'm still not a believer in this Mets lineup overall, even though it's starting to improve. I'm going to go with the under in this game. You can take the under in the first 5 if you don't trust the bullpens, but I'm going to go with the under in the full game as well. Next up, we see the Houston Astros taking on the Kansas City Royals. Seth Lugo and Hunter Brown are your starters. I think the opposite happens in this game. I like the over in this ball game. Hunter Brown, we saw 5 earned runs against the Rangers in that last game in a 10-2 loss. He just hasn't been very sharp this season. The control's been off. He's not pitching deep into ball games. The Royals hit righties very, very well. Their isolated power numbers are there. I think they'll get to Hunter Brown. But Seth Lugo on the other side, I think the Houdini act comes to an end a bit in this ball game. While I have a Royals, futures ticket for them to win the AL Central, I need Lugo to be a sharp option in this rotation. I am a little bit worried about regression because he's somebody that's given up quite a few, sharp contact base hits in that last game against the White Sox. He was able to get out of a lot of jams in that game and the game against the Minnesota Twins, but how many times could he get out of those jams against the Houston Astros and teams, players that are great runners in scoring position in their careers? I think that the Astros get to him for quite a few runs early in this game, and I don't really love either of these bullpens. So at a pretty hitter-friendly ballpark at Kauffman Stadium, I'm going to go with the over with 2 great lineups. Next up, we see the Oakland Athletics taking on the Texas Rangers. Ross Stripling, Cody Bradford are your starters. When we were looking at that Athletics-Tigers series, I mentioned that the Paul Blackburn-Kenta Maeda matchup, when I was looking ahead at the series, was the matchup I kind of circled as the spot where I thought the A's had their best chance of winning. And that was a game that the A's did win outright. And I think this is the game in this series, even though the Rangers, the defending World Series champs, a great lineup, They're facing Ross Stripling, who's actually been pretty solid. Even though he's taken a couple losses, his ERA is sub 4, and the expected numbers aren't too bad because he does a good job at limiting the walks and home runs. His strikeout numbers need to improve a little bit, but I still think he's a good option. I mean, we saw a really low-scoring game in that last one with Stripling against the Red Sox. 7 innings of one-run baseball. It was a 1-0 loss, but I think Stripling keeps the A's competitive in this game, and you're facing Cody Bradford on the other side, a lefty for the Rangers, who, has pitched well this season, no doubt about it, but the A's have actually hit a lot better against lefties this year in terms of their OPS, isolated power, their strikeout rate, all much better numbers against lefties than against righties this year. So I think they can get to Bradford for a few runs. And while the A's bullpen's not great, neither is the Rangers. So I think this is the game. This was the game, like I said, I circled when I looked at the upcoming matchups that the A's had their best chance of competing in. So I'm going to take a shot here at Oakland plus the 1.5 runs and the money line as well. And that's it. Those are the games for Wednesday in Major League Baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe and put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.